Welcome to the KayaCast, the podcast for cannabis businesses looking to launch, grow, and scale their operations.
So how did you end up owning a tech company in the cannabis industry?
Yeah, I asked myself that a lot. I was working for a company called Big Chalk, and Big Chalk it's a data analytics company in the CPG space, and they had branched out into cannabis, spun off a company called Hoodie Analytics, and through my work with the Hoodie Analytics team, and kind of my antennas went off when I saw the opportunity, the market opportunity in the cannabis space, the maturity of the technology in the space, and kind of the compliance. Actually, the regulatory issues were fairly attractive to me. We could talk about that later, but my specialty has been going into kind of constrained or legacy industries and modernizing them with new technology. And I've done that across multiple industries over many years.
Ah, gotcha. And then did you see a huge opportunity in the education side of the industry?
Education of the consumer?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I put it. So the short answer is yes. The longer answer is the opportunity to open up the market. There's I would argue that segmentation, the traditional CPG or e-com marketing segmentation just doesn't happen that often within cannabis, and so they've been marketing to the same customers and competing for the same pie and just trying to get a bigger slice. Where I say, okay, there's a bigger pie out here. And how do you get to that bigger pie? And that's, opening up the CRM to new customers that aren't in market yet. And there's a barrier. There's a lot of barriers to entry, from stigma to awareness to pricing and to just understanding a very complicated product, right? So when it's less about education per se and more about turning down the noise and creating an experience that ask those complicated questions in an easy way and using math and AI in the back end to translate that into, okay, here's the right product for you based on what you're telling me, based on what you already know. And not bringing in... Go ahead.
Yeah. No, we talk about that a lot in the industry right now has our struggles, right? And you mentioned that we're going after the same pie, the recreational medical industry, but the health industry is so much bigger than the cannabis industry. And health is, as in, people want to sleep better, they want better gut health, they want all these things. There's functional mushrooms had a huge surge recently, and the functional mushroom industry is targeting health. That industry has grown to $500 million overnight.
Yeah, wellness. I mean, in the 55 and older, and we'll even bring that down to the 45 and older category. So the largest converting segment into the cannabis market, they're looking for wellness use cases. To your point, I want to sleep better. I want to focus. I want to reduce pain. I want to relax. They're not super interested in understanding necessarily the cannabinoids and the ratios of CBD. That they just want to shop for it. They shop for aspirin. I have a problem. I want a solution, and what's my best way to that solution? And if you give it to them in a confident way, you ask a question, give a response. You on the retail side, you're creating a different type of relationship with the customer, right? The most THC for the buck customer, they were there day one, easy acquisition. They were lined up and ready to go. You didn't really have to do a whole lot of kind of special outreach. They were excited to buy cannabis legally. They did it. Now everybody's fighting for that customer when we're saying that's great, service those customers, and by the way, there's an opportunity to expand their wallet share. And the bigger opportunity for decommoditizing cannabis is bringing in different segments that you're creating, like Whole Foods. If you create that Whole Foods relationship with them, you will now have a more loyal customer that is going to spend more money more often with you.
If you were, and I think about this a lot, who would I target if I owned a brand in the cannabis industry or even a dispensary? You have your normal recreational customers, but who would I target and what products would I hold to target these niche, the riches that are in the niches, right? Demographics. And for me, I would target entrepreneurs. Like me, I care about productivity and energy. And there's so many different products in our industry that will give you a natural boost in productivity and energy.
Right. Well, that's segmentation, right? So yeah, there's the entrepreneurs, but if I looked at it just in terms of like cohort size, the biggest cohort size is 45 and older, right? I mean, we have an inverted age pyramid in the United States, right? So you have this growing older, the silver tsunami, whatever you want to call it. So that's where the massive opportunity is. Not to say you wouldn't focus on other segments as well, but again, segmentation is important, and the conversations I've had in retail, it seems to be a relatively, I'm not going to say a new concept, but it's more complicated than they're used to. Is taking the CRM, understanding how to segment it, building out messaging for those CRM, and then for those segments, and then reaching out to segments that aren't in their CRM yet. I think that's the biggest challenge, is creating awareness around the dispensaries. I would say, where I live, just outside of Chicago, the dispensaries, we've done some analysis, and your average dispensary in a Chicago suburb is missing probably about 2 to 3x the potential customer base within a couple miles of their location, because their barrier to entry, one, awareness, and that they create the awareness, getting that new customer in the door with the current experience is very difficult.
Yeah.
Right? So creating new experiences that engage those segments in the way they need to be engaged. You can't force somebody to talk. The retailers can't force somebody to talk their language. They have to they have to make the bridge to talk to them. So, and that's where hemp does a very good job. The hemp derived companies, they have a better CPG understanding. And they do a much better job at connecting with customers in the way they need to be connected with.
So what do they do differently that cannabis companies can learn from?
They use different words. They use different imagery. They have different online experiences. They have a more wellness, to your point, they have a more wellness-focused approach to how they engage with the customer, and they bring, because it's hemp derived anyways, they don't need to bring in the complications of cannabinoids and terpenes, right? And so I think what we do is turn down that noise, right? Make it kind of that Google One Box approach. Just what are the relevant questions? How do you want to feel? How do you want it to taste? How intense do you want it? And how do you want to consume it? From those questions, we can tell what is the best product for you at any given within any given retailer's inventory.
How does StrainBrain fit into this equation? For me, I always think about there's two problems to solve, and they're worth solving. One is, how do you attract people in different segments, right? Yeah. For me personally, how do you attract entrepreneurs? I will spend $400, $500 a month if it increased my productivity. I will not spend that recreationally I'm a different consumer. I'm a health consumer. Right. So if you help me sleep better, be more productive, have more energy throughout the day, and do it naturally, I'll spend a ton of money for that. So that's one. And then when that person comes in and they're not educated on the type of products, how do you guide them through their experience?
So I'll take the second part of that first, because the first part of that I think is more complicated but doable. So the second part is normalizing the conversation. I mean, just yesterday we did a dispensary tour with some new people to the industry to just get some market data. We went to 6 different dispensaries, all kind of independents, big MSOs, right, and kind of went with people and kind of coached them and said, okay, here's your use case. You're a 45 and older, and you want to sleep, and so we wanted to have the same conversation each place. Go in and talk to a bud tender. I love bud tenders, right? So this isn't a slam on them. This is more of an operations issue. But in every case, nobody asked, what are you looking for? What problem are you looking to solve, right? And how what is your comfort level, what's your experience, and they use terms like, how it hits and couch lock, and it's like, it was fine, but they would never have made a sale to this cohort, meaning. And so the idea is, okay, so if these bud tenders have StrainBrain as a tool, it does a few things. It normalizes the conversation, right? So if they go from bud tender to bud tender, they're still starting in the conversation in the same way, right? Here are the 4 questions we're going to ask, and those are very important 4 questions the bud tender should ask right out of the gate. How do you want to feel? What problem are you looking to solve, right? Sleep, focus, I just want to party, whatever. That's a very important foundational question. How do you want to consume? Obviously, format. Each one of these starts to narrow it down, and how intense do you want it to be? And then, the bud tender will get to some subjectivity, and their recommendation, our algorithm is fairly concise, and there might be some discrepancy between the bud tender and the recommendation, but it's a point of conversation now to have with the customer. And if the customer comes in a second time and is asked this, if they were to just have if they were not using StrainBrain, they would have a separate conversation and possibly get a second recommendation. And now you've killed consumer confidence and created anxiety. But if you start the conversation in the same way, ask the same questions, you've then said, okay, you asked me the same questions. Why are you recommending something different? If you're recommending something different, or if you get, or they agree with the recommendation, then there's a tremendous amount of customer confidence there. That's the first part of your question. That's the second part of your question, right? If you go in and you wanted to, I want more focus. Let's start with that question and build on that. How do you get more people into the dispensaries? And obviously, with being a regulated industry, limited in terms of how you can market and make yourself present, but use the assets you have, right? They have customers. Those customers, for example, we're working with one dispensary. Those customers have parents, right? So how do you bring your parents to the dispensary week and use StrainBrain as that piece that makes them more comfortable and normalizing the conversation? And depending on where you're at, be at the farmer's market with a tablet that I'm StrainBrain biased here, but that has StrainBrain and has asked these really simple questions and creates their first order for them, obviously with a discount or some promo to get them in the store. But use those mechanisms at your disposal, sponsoring within the community, engaging the customers you already have. They're going to be your best referrals if they're bringing in other customers having the right conversation. So bring them in, but have the right conversation with them. I wrote an article again about sending my mom into a dispensary, and she came out and she's like, some kid said, smoke this cheetah piss and you'll get couch lock, and he said it like it's a good thing, right? And not the conversation to have with my mom.
Yeah, so. You hit the nail on the head. If you're listening and you want to target a different segment, it now comes down to, where are these people, and what do you think these people care about? So I always think about, okay, well, let's say if I wanted to target developers, for example, highly skilled professionals that get paid to focus, right? Where are these developers?
Right.
And can you, in a room with these developers, how would you start this conversation? And then from there, you're going to learn so much on your outreach strategy. You're going to fail a lot. You're going to get some aha moments, and you just follow down that path to try to get more people into the store.
So I think there's 2 parts to that. It's what do you want and what don't you want, right? I think when you get into, if you're new to cannabis, there's a lot of potential outcomes you don't want, right? So if you can give them a journey, a path that gets them to what they want, and allow them to understand what mistakes can be made, that take them. And part of the reason I got into this was because when I was younger, I had journeys I did not want, right? Because here, take this. No instruction on what it was or how much I should take, and I had some very unpleasant experiences. And part of this is not just to get people the right product, but also to minimize those negative outcomes. Because while they're not physically harming, they're just unpleasant, and we'd really like to avoid those because they're avoidable. So it's finding out what they want. I think you have to. Influencers matter, right? If you find those influencers that can speak to their personal experience with the products and how it helped them, how they use it, how they help them. I mean, we've seen that psychedelics have been big because the influencers are talking about psilocybin and they're talking about DMT and these other things. You don't have that in cannabis right now. I don't see it a lot, at least. They talk it very generally, in a very general sense, and we got to get specific with the right people who are using it. I mean, so you like you said, you use it to focus. I would love to have an interview with you that talks about how you're using that to be more productive.
Mm-hmm. That's a really good point, because a part of understanding how you should go to market is talking to people in the segment that are doing it already.
Oh,
and
yeah.
the more you understand your customers, the better you understand how to actually reach these customers. And when you reach these customers, what do they actually care about? How should you communicate with these customers? That's a huge, people are missing a lot. The cannabis industry is, I think right now, half the size of what the health and wellness industry is. Health and wellness
I would say it's a lot less than half.
Yeah.
And depending on what you include in that category, but if you go into CVS right now, I mean, they have whole new sections with gummies of different, from ashwagandha to magnesium to melatonin. If you get into that loop on your Instagram feed or TikTok, all you're going to be throwing are supplements and formulations of that, and I mean it's massive, and it's cannabis is to lose at the moment.
Yeah, and if the segment that you're targeting is a segment that actually has money, which is
that's
come on, guys.
Right, and like, listen, if you're in Michigan, and most of the retailers I've talked to, they only know one lever to pull: price. Mm-hmm. I believe that for the right marketer, the right retailer in Michigan, there's a Whole Foods opportunity in the right location where you can get customers coming in and spending a lot more money for the experience and attention you're giving them, the quality of product, the perception of quality, and the actual quality of product you're giving them, the consistency and experience. I think there's an opportunity for retailers in Michigan to stop pulling the pricing lever and stand out in different ways. Otherwise, mm-hmm. you're just. I mean, if you go, there's an area in Michigan called New Buffalo, right over the border, and I think it's certainly the most concentration of dispensaries in Michigan, and with like a square mile or something. But how do you differentiate, right?
Yeah,
it's if price is your only differentiation, you have an end date. And it's just a matter of how far out that is.
So tell me a little bit more about StrainBrain. What are the problems that you guys are solving, and how is it that you guys are solving this problem?
So I'd love to tell you that I was the genius behind the algorithms, but I'm not. And it was started by two guys out of Canada, Andrew Lieber and Graham Boehm, and they were doing AI diagnostics for, I think, early diagnostics for bone marrow cancer detection, and went into a dispensary, and they're like, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be a better way to shop for this. They didn't particularly have a lot of experience with cannabis, but they understood human behavior. They understand how AI could apply. This was 4 years ago, so it's fairly early on in the modern AI journey. And they repurposed some of their diagnostic algorithms towards cannabis, and they took a very medical approach, meaning that they understood that meta-analysis was more important than COA data, right? And that's kind of the goal.
For those that are listening, can you explain a little bit more on what that means?
So meta-analysis is looking at broad research and kind of finding the signal in that broad research on the outcome in this case, of a strain or a product. So COAs may say one thing, product description may say something else, but what are customers? What is the actual science on the molecule say, and then what is the consumer sentiment and the experience? So taking all of that into account in a meta fashion, and each one of these things is weighted differently in the algorithm. We're constantly evaluating the weight of those as well.
Oh wow! So you're not only solving when the customer comes through, how do you structure the conversation to get to the heart of what somebody feels, but then you're also using that data that you're receiving to communicate with the customer base more
Yeah, so
effectively.
that'll be coming in 2026. So that second piece of how we then move up that Martech stack on engagement and help them better engage customers on a one-on-one basis.
Wow. I had no idea that you guys had your own data. And it makes so much more sense because ultimately at the end of the day, cannabinoids, terpenes, etc., they should all, that's the foundation. The product itself, it just goes to that foundation. That's the base layer.
Right, right. So there's a product intent, right? When new product development, and I'll just take CPG because I'm not convinced that it's necessarily the same approach in cannabis yet. It's getting there. There's product intent. Like marketing's job is always to say like, okay, what's the opportunity in the market, and do I have a product to solve that opportunity? If not, let's make one. And then what are the price points that the consumer is willing to pay, right? So there's product intent. There's actual, with cannabis in particular, with flower, you have continuity issues from flower to flower, from batch to batch. So there's stabilization of quality and consistency of quality. And then it's okay, how do we believe there's an opportunity for this product, and we believe there's a market for it, and now the price point, I think that there's not the same kind of thought that goes into it because they're not selling it in the same way you would in a CPG, in a traditional CPG world. So if we can bring those other two pieces into line, like, okay, how are we selling it? Then
What
we can
does
change the price.
CPG stand for?
I said consumer packaged goods. So anything, you going into a grocery store, and from cereal to alcohol to whatever is packaged up for consumers. Those products aren't there by accident. They do a lot of testing on what consumers are looking for. That's why if you go from one country to another, there's different taste profiles, right? So you get potato chips that are one flavor in Japan and another flavor in the UK or something. That's because they've tested the market to understand what those preferences are, and applying that same. And we have that. We see that by region. So part of our tech, we also evaluate what people are searching for, and we see very much a regionality to flavor profiles, to product formats. This is, we work closely, like I said, Hoodie Analytics. They do a very good job of helping us understand those trends. But there's regionality here too, and within there's urban. We see differences between urban and suburban and rural preferences. So it's the more you understand that and can market to those different nuances, the more effective you're going to be.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense for sure. If I was a retailer today, right, and you're in a position that you work with a lot of retailers to really help them understand their customer base better and leverage technology to communicate better, segment. You have a customer base today. You can only increase sales twofold. One, you can increase the number of customers that come through the door. So maybe the frequency of your existing customer base, but that really doesn't necessarily happen that much. Everybody has a budget. Increase the number of unique customers that come through, or increase the size of the order, right? Not a lot of ways that you can really impact your sales.
I would say third is frequency, right?
Yeah, frequency. How should a retailer approach increasing the footprint of their store, leveraging a technology like StrainBrain?
Yeah. So like Greenlight, they're one of our customers. They do a very good job of creating awareness. So different states have different regulations, and different retailers also have different resources. So it's what, based on what resources you have available, what knowledge you have available. And I would say that any retailer of almost any size can find a outreach. I'm going to call them an outreach expert, because that's a different set of, a bunch of from SEO to marketing engagement to awareness to social. There's different ways to do it. Greenlight, they actually are allowed, I guess in Missouri you can run radio ads. So they run radio ads to say, hey, come, we have this AI bud tender. You don't be afraid. It's going to ask you all the questions. It's about creating that awareness in the community. And I think that means different. There's no one answer for every retailer. It really depends on the the dynamics of that retailer, what their demographics are, where they are, what their competitive landscape is. But I would say you have to understand your consumers and who's shopping with you already. You have to understand who's around you, which isn't that hard. I mean, there's ways to do that are fairly simple. And then understand, like I said, by me, like farmers markets, bring your parents to the dispensary. Be creative, get creative. I don't see a lot of marketing creativity. I went, if I go to Denver, son goes to school there, I open the local papers that are advertising cannabis, and I'm like, okay, they've been in business for 15 years or however long they've been selling cannabis legally in Denver, and they are showing the same tribal images and language and from paper to paper, and they're talking about, I mean, they are missing so much opportunity by not, if one of them just got out of line and started talking to consumers in a more gentle way with different imagery and about use cases and wellness, they would crush it.
I always think to myself, just like any business, you kind of start small and you run a lot of experiments, and the first experiment that you run, you may not, most likely are not going to be successful, but you're going to learn a lot on the information that comes back. And
so here's my take. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead. But I feel as although there's no magic bullet, and a lot of people think that they have to go big, and it has to work the first time that they outreach to their audience, which is a huge mistake that I see.
That's a great point. I mean, this is trial and error, right? Do small, correct, what worked, what didn't work. Let's make a correction. Let's do two different things and see what works a little bit better. I feel like when I go through my Instagram feed or if I go to MJ Biz or whatever, these conferences, I just feel like everybody there is talking to each other, right? They're doing what they do because that's what everybody else is doing, or they don't want to be, I don't exactly know what the pathology is. They don't want to be different. They're afraid to be different. They don't understand how to be different. But if I look at cannabis feeds and social media, they're talking about getting high, and they're talking about cheap THC, and, showing people lighting up blunts, and all that's fine for that segment. But it's isolating and even pushing away more opportunity.
You hit the nail on the head. It's pushing away.
Yeah.
The health industry, the health consumer is so much bigger than the recreational cannabis consumer that if you go too hard on blunts, on just the culture stuff, right, that it pushes away the professionals. So there is a lane that you have to pick and choose, I would say. But yeah, I always think, well, okay, if I owned a dispensary, how would I experiment this? And there's a lot of ways that you can go. Granted, it depends on regulations, depends on what you can do, what you can say, all those things. You have to make sure that you're on side. But THCV, for example, helps you focus. And if you've taken it, you would know that, hey, this is actually a really good tool that doesn't get you high, but it maximizes the time that you have in a particular task. Would that not be great in universities?
Right.
Now you have that nugget. It's just figuring out what the right messaging is, what that looks like, what the outreach looks like, and you kind of go down that rabbit hole. What works, what doesn't work. You get your first initial customers that come in, you interview them, and then the door opens when you talk to your customers.
And the good news is, everything you're saying and I'm saying, we're not the first people. We're not the first industry to do this, right? The playbook's there. I'm not saying anything that's revolutionary in terms of marketing, right? The playbook's there, and it's been done and tested, and there's methods and processes that are all there to do exactly what you're saying. Run those small tests, see what works, set your expectations right now. Listen, I get it. They don't have a lot of extra money, but
you don't need money for this. You don't. You start small. You don't need a lot of things. You just need action and some intention, and the persistence to try, get feedback, calibrate, try, get feedback, calibrate, and it's a march towards infinity.
Yeah. Listen, you can go and do some research and see what keywords the hemp companies are investing in, right? And those are keywords that you might want to think about right, on a local basis, because they're doing a really good job of monopolizing those keywords and the
Yeah.
authority on those ideas.
So tell me a little bit more about StrainBrain. I,
Yeah.
I know a little bit about it, and I know that you guys use proprietary AI to kind of really dial things in. How can a retailer leverage this technology today to increase sales?
It's super simple. That was it. One other reason we bought it, because of the elegance of the implementation. We're implemented with a lot of the top e-com platforms, Dutchie, Jane, Weed Maps, a few others, and doing an integration with a new platform is super easy for us. And once it's integrated, literally the dispensary puts in 3 lines of code in the header that injects our script in there. Now our script sits on top of their website, just kind of innocuously in whatever corner they choose with whatever imagery they choose, and it could be as big or small as they want. And now the customer has an option to have a different shopping experience. I think the trending buzzword is conversational commerce, right? Which is like IBM and SAP. They're kind of all pushing that, and you see it in other industries. Amazon has Rufus, and Walmart has their version of it. But this is that first foray into that new menu experience in cannabis, which gets out of the more traditional matrix of products and says, let's have a conversation. Let me understand how you want to feel, and in most cases, this is a 10-minute install. It's not a deep integration. We're not going deep into systems.
But what does the integration do? You're connected now to the marketplace.
So the integration, it brings our modal, it's not a chatbot, but our interface into their e-commerce environment. So if they click on the bottom, give me a recommendation, it opens up the modal and now gives them this AI-driven experience that we really engineered off of the Google One Box experience, meaning we're taking away all of the noise, as much noise as we can, and bringing out all of the anxiety-inducing pieces, and just asking a few questions to get them to a product. We have another version that's an embedded version, meaning it can be built into a standalone page. We have a couple of dispensaries that are coming out with this, and they're going to use this as a landing page or a turn down the noise page, and we can change the journey that's more focused on wellness or more focused on performance. But the base implementation is this AI bud tender that sits in the corner, and when you're ready to use it, it opens up and asks you 4 simple questions to get you to a recommendation. And we only go against products that are in inventory, right? So you're never going to get a recommendation of something that's not there.
Can you leverage this in store?
Yeah, so like Greenlight runs it on all their kiosks, right? So we are integrated to the kiosk as well, and some cases they're using it. Some different MSOs are using it when they do this outreach in the field, right? With people that aren't as experienced with cannabis, to say, hey, we're just going to ask you 4 simple questions and get you a recommendation on a tablet or a phone, so it can be deployed. It's actually mobile first development, so it's a great mobile experience.
If somebody wanted to experience this for themselves, where can they go online today?
Oh, lots of places. I'll go East Coast to West Coast. So East Coast, I know there's the ones that are just coming to the top of mind. Higher Collective on the East Coast. Midwest, in the Chicagoland area, Windy City Dispensary, Greenlight. Missouri, obviously Greenlight. There's a couple of new pilots that are going to come online next week that are going to bring us into about 200 more locations across the country, and I'm missing a ton. There's a Union Chill in New York and New Jersey, Torches in New York City. There's a ton more. I can't remember off the top of my head, but there's a lot of different places.
That's so neat. I always think about, for me, what is the best customer experience? But so let's say a customer goes through this. They get what they want. What is the experience afterwards? How do you guys increase the frequency of customers coming back? And what should be a strategy that's deployed to increase the customer base too?
So the first part of the question is, okay, so now how And we work with dispensaries on marketing, right? Because we understand that just getting the sale, the one sale is great. Getting the second sale is better, and the third and larger carts are better. So then it becomes, okay, what does that communication campaign look like with that customer? And this gets into segmentation. And I keep talking about segmentation because it's so important.
Sorry, do you guys plug into, say, a loyalty platform? Or
we do. So we're integrated with StrainBrain. We're integrated with Alpine. We'll soon to be integrated with Dutchie's loyalty program. So like Greenlight uses. So every time you can sign up through StrainBrain and you get and send 100 points or something at Greenlight, for example. And then they have every day that you come back and just do a search, you can get points even if you don't complete a transaction. And they move the number around. So some days it's 5 points, some days it's 100 points. Gamifies it a little bit. But then it's about the communication and conversation with the customer afterwards. And this is, again, more stuff we're coming out with in 2026, which is, okay, you purchased this through StrainBrain. How'd you like it? Did it meet your expectations, or where didn't it? So we're going to use that data to continue to improve. And then the customer, again, there's the research that shows when you ask them specifically about their actions and you react to it, it increases their loyalty and connection to that retail location and their propensity to spend more per product, and be less concerned in some cases about discounting and cheapest product.
So that's something that you mentioned, something really important is the closed loop feedback that you have with your customers. And I feel as though business owners, I'm not talking about dispensaries themselves, but there's not enough conversations with customers. And if you don't have that closed loop feedback on how you're doing, you can never really calibrate. And how well do you understand your business is how well you understand your customers. That's just rule number one.
And retailers have a choice, right? They can be seen as an intimate business, like a local coffee shop. They can be seen as just an operations, we get you cheap product, we don't know a lot about you. Or an innovative company, like you come to us because, we're doing some really cool stuff with products. And I don't see a lot of retailers thinking a lot about what do we want our relationship with our customer to be? And then how are we driving the dynamics of that relationship, right?
Do you find, and a lot of people will think this, but I would love to know your experience on this is there a disconnection or is there a worry that retailers have that they lose a connection with their customers because they're leveraging technology to have these conversations?
My experience is that I haven't heard that a whole lot. The technology is going to, because I don't think they have a whole lot. I think, if you look at it, they don't really have a lot of intimacy with their customers, right? They're really, broad strokes here, but they're marketing on price, almost unilaterally, not 100%, but almost unilaterally they're marketing on price. And that really takes out the intimacy thing that I think especially the new segments coming to the market are looking for. Like, I want you to, if you know my name when I come in, that would be great. And that goes a long way. If you know my name when you send me an email and you talk about my last purchase and my history and you're showing that you understand me, it changes our relationship. So I think, I don't know that there's a fundamental understanding either way of how certainly you can implement technology in a very cold way, right? Yeah. That does turn people off. But you can also use it to drive a very personal relationship. And I think both of those are kind of lost.
Yeah, I'm a huge believer that technology complements customer experience. And you kind of have to put it into your retail experience properly, obviously. You can't just fully just turn your...
I mean, but we're not looking to push bartenders out. Use this tool to just create a consistent experience, right? And get to ask the important questions on a consistent basis to help the customers find the right product, and just connect, right? And that's we're looking to create. I mean, if you go to a standard cannabis menu right now, there's not a lot of human connection there, right? There's a lot of words that are nonsensical. There's chemistry that's doesn't mean a lot to some people. And so how do you, go ahead. I'm sorry.
You know, I visit dispensaries often, and
Yeah.
it surprises me on how many times I just get order takers. You know, you talk to somebody, and if they're just an order taker, you're losing so much. You're leaving so much money on the table. You're leaving a lot of upsell, but also the customer experience. Now, why am I coming back? You've been zero help to me. So I have to come in educated already. I have to understand your menu, and
100%.
that's just a terrible experience.
100%. Yeah, I mean that's that intimacy piece. There is no intimacy in that relationship, and that's, you know, even if you look at, it doesn't have to. Whole Foods, I keep using them just because they've done a great job over the years of creating a perception, real or otherwise, of quality and speaking to a segment, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the more you can do that, the more you can create a great relationship, create experiences, and just dollars and cents, get higher margin, more shoppers more often to your dispensary, and differentiate yourself. And what's the differentiation from dispensary to dispensary?
No, I know that you have to run. I have to have you back as you.
Love it. Appreciate it.
I love talking about how to increase sales in the dispensary, and I'm sure that our listeners love that as well, right? This is a huge topic for everybody.
Let's do it. Well, it was great. I enjoyed the conversation. Great. Enjoyed your perspective and your input.
How can our listeners find you?
They can find me in the usual ways. I'm on all of the social channels. I'm on LinkedIn or Noel at StrainBrain.co, or LinkedIn. You can find me at /Noel Berkman. Twitter, I think I'm at /Noel Berkman. Or Instagram, you can find StrainBrain. I think it's just StrainBrain /StrainBrain. I don't know. Check that.
Guys, if you're listening and you want to just reach out and talk a little bit more on how to increase the footprint of people coming in your business, reach out to Noel, Wealth of Knowledge. Noel, thank you so much for coming on, and we will have to have you on sometime in the near future. Just continue this.
Tom, appreciate it. Appreciate you. Great conversation. Really enjoyed it.
Thanks for listening to the KayaCast podcast. We hope you enjoyed the show. Don't forget to subscribe to our podcast in your favorite podcast app, or visit our website to access the full archive of episodes from the show.